The excellence of our nations that we emphasize has nothing in common with racism or national chauvinism. We do not assert that the Koreans' biological constitution is more developed than those of other races. Defining the superiority of a nation according to biological or ethnic characteristics is the practice of reactionary bourgeois ethnology, arguing that national characteristics are defined by racial characteristics. Bourgeois ethnologists classify people according to skin colours, namely white people as a higher race and non-white people as a lower race. They say that only a higher race can create advanced civilization. The reactionary ethnological doctrine has been used by imperialists as an ideological instrument for their policy of racial discrimination and obliteration of nations. Imperialists still use bourgeois ethnological doctrine as an instrument to justify their domination over other nations, to spread national nihilism, the idea of subservience to great powers, and the idea of dependence on foreign forces among the people of colonial dependent countries and the people of the Third World, and to obstruct their national independence and independent development. Fundamentally speaking, there can be no higher race or lower race. All of the races are endowed with creative intelligence and ability. The low level of civilization of nations under colonial subjugation in the past is not due to any inborn inability, but is the consequence of the imperialist predatory policy and their policy of keeping colonial people in ignorance. The people of the Third World, who were despised by the imperialists as a lower race, have now become the masters of their own destiny and are making brilliant successes in the creation of a new life, and are steadily raising their level of civilization. By contrast, in the United States, where white people who claim to be the most developed race make up the overwhelming majority of the population, illiterate people are growing in number and their intellectual level is gradually dropping. This fact here patently proves the fallacy of the bourgeois ethnological doctrine. Our country has neither a large population nor a large territory, and it is not in economic power. So there is no reason for us to look down upon other nations or to reject them. National chauvinism is a reactionary idea of the exploiting class and of the imperialists. Reactionary racism and national chauvinism, which were used by imperialists as their ideological instrument for aggression and domination, have categorically been rejected by progressive humanity. The Japanese imperialists who clamoured for the mission of leadership over other nations by claiming the superiority of the Yamato race, and the German fascists who attempted world domination by advertising the superiority of the Aryan race, received the judgment of history. But in spite of this, the US and other imperialists are still using racism and national chauvinism in justifying their domination and plundering of other nations. Today, the US imperialists have combined the bourgeois ethnological doctrine and national chauvinism with aggressive cosmopolitanism and are using these as an ideological instrument for realizing their ambition for world domination. Cosmopolitanism, which denies the nation-state, the independent national economy, and national culture, preaches a world state, a world economy, and a culture without national identity, serves to justify the imperialist aggression and domination and the exploitation by multinational enterprises. The US imperialists are working viciously to dominate the world and enslave many nations by preaching racism, national chauvinism, and cosmopolitanism, and cooking up the supremacy of the white race and the, quote, leading role of the United States, unquote, in the world. Our nation first principle, which is thoroughly opposed to reactionary racism, national chauvinism, and cosmopolitanism, not only values the good traits of different nations, but also respects the independence of other nations. What we are opposed to is not the pride various nations take in their excellent national traits, but the dominationism that ignores them and tramples upon them. Our nation-first spirit is associated with the noble thought and feelings of respect for trust in other nations. Since ancient times, our nation has had a strong sense of justice, a love of truth, a value of morality, and a sympathetic, well-mannered, modest nature. Our nation, with these traits, has never invaded another country and has never harmed any nation throughout our entire history. Our nation has fought uncompromisingly against the enemies who infringed upon our sovereignty, but has promoted friendship with the peoples who respected our sovereignty and lived in harmony with them. Especially in the common struggle against imperialism for the construction of socialism, the Korean communists and other people have fought shoulder to shoulder with other revolutionary peoples, sharing in life and death, in joy and sorrow. Because it is based on this laudable national character, the Korean nation-first spirit constitutes a fair and reasonable idea, and the feeling that precludes any chauvinistic elements. These fine traits of our nation are now flowering more beautifully on the basis of the Juche idea. The Juche idea is a man-centered idea that puts forward the masses as masters of everything and as the most precious beings in the world, thorough champions of their own independence. The Juche idea is therefore fundamentally opposed to misanthropy, chauvinism, and dominationism. Because it is based on the Juche idea, which regards man as the most precious being and champions of the independence of the masses, the Korean nation-first spirit constitutes a noble idea and a feeling that respects the desires of all nations for independence and their interests. Today's actual life patently proves that our people's Korean nation-first spirit is a noble idea, and that feeling has nothing in common with national selfishness or national arrogance. Even though they carry out the revolution in difficult conditions in direct confrontation with US imperialism, our people are giving unstinting material and moral support to the encouragement of many third world peoples who strive for independence. They also accord very kind treatment to foreign guests on visits to our country. Foreign friends highly admire our people's sincerity and kindness and express high respect for and trust in our people. All these facts clearly show that our people's Korean nation-first spirit is a noble idea, and feeling that coincides with the feelings of international solidarity and friendship with all peoples of the world who aspire after independence.